So thank you for the introduction. I'm Miriam Schlindwein. I'm working as a developer at Hallo Welt, and I will talk about tasks and mentions. That's the project I worked this year on, and it's about how you can create tasks in a wiki, and mentions is about how you can mention a user on a wiki page. So at first I will give you an overview over the extensions which are necessary to get the tasks and mentions running in a wiki. That's 4. Then I will give you a live demo and show you how you can use that in the wiki. And after that, it will be a little bit more technical. I will talk about the challenge for the extension checklists we had and how you can extend parser with a DOM process. First of all, why you need tasks in a wiki. So if you are using your wiki as an internal documentation and have your meeting minutes there, then you will probably come to a point where you create tasks and assign them to someone. And then it would be good if you could create a task and assign it directly to a person which is attending in the meeting. So everyone will know what he has to do, when he has to do, and what he has to do. So that's why we created that project, and you will not need a second tool for it, so you can have all in your wiki directly. So what is a task? You will need a person which is responsible for the task. You will probably need a due date, when it has to be done, and a description, what has to be done. And this matches exactly our extensions. So we have 4 of them. We have the extension AtMentions, which is responsible for the person, so the user which is assigned to the task. Then we have the DateTimeTools extension that allows you to set a date in the wiki. And then we have the checklists extension, which is the description of the task and will also create a simple to-do list. And then we have the extension SimpleTasks, and this combines, or if you combine the elements of the 3 extension, SimpleTask will recognize this as a task. So if you have the user, your due date, and the description of a task, SimpleTask will recognize this and says, okay, now we have a task on this page, and will handle then the task management. So let's talk about the extension AtMention. You probably all know how the link syntax works, so it's very hard currently to mention a user on a page or to set a user link on a page, because you have to know the username, which can be difficult if you work with real names. And that's why we added AtMentions, so it will be a lot easier to add a user link. You will get an inspector where you can search for username or real name, and the link will be automatically inserted in the content. Also, if you save on the page, the content will be, the user will be notified that he was mentioned on a page and that he has to check out the page. The insertion of the user link can be done with a visual editor sequence. So you have to click the white space and then the @ sign, and then the inspector will pop up, and you can insert the username. Or if you don't know the sequence or you don't want to do that, you can use the button in the toolbar, which we added in the visual editor toolbar. Then we have the extension DateTimeTools. This allows you to set dates, also with a dedicated date picker. It will also highlight the date, so you have a little date calendar icon. And if you want to, you could also use this for, maybe if you want to have a timeline on your wiki page, you could also use that. It's done with a tag implementation, so we have the datetime tag, and it can be inserted with the visual editor sequence space followed by 2 slashes. The extension checklists is probably the most complex extension here, but the purpose is still straightforward. So if you want to create a checklist, a to-do list, you could do that with checklists. So if you're inserting that, you will get those check boxes, and then you can type the description. it can be added with the sequence in visual edit mode with the square brackets and then the space, and then you will get the checkbox. Or if you want to create a checklist element in the wiki text, you also can use the same sequence, so this matches here. This will be explained a little bit later, how we did that. If you want to check or mark the element as done, you can click on the checkbox, then it gets a little check inside, or in wiki text you can add a X, and then it will be also marked as done. So the extension SimpleTasks now needs those 3 extensions. Maybe as a side note, the 3 mentioned extensions can be used standalone. So you can also use AtMentions without using SimpleTasks. But if you want to use SimpleTasks, you will need all 3 extensions because they combine then as a task. So the task is created out of a combination with the checklist element. Then you will need a user mention in the same line as the checklist, that it's assigned to each other. And the due date, that's optional, so that's not required to create a task, but probably it's a good practice to set a due date. The task is also stored then in the database and as an SMW sub-object on the page, so you can query that. You can create your own overview for the tasks which are assigned to you, or if you want to search for a date, you can query that as well. If you don't want to use that, or if you don't want to query with a sub-object, then you can also use the tag task report, which is implemented in SimpleTasks. And then you can filter as well for a user or for tasks in a dedicated namespace, or for the state if it's open or closed. And I guess I will demonstrate how this can be done. Okay. So we will have here a plain wiki page. And if we're going in edit mode, I already said for adding a user mention, you have here this add mention button. If you click on that, you will get the inspector already with suggested users which are in the wiki. This wiki doesn't have that much, so it will only display those both. Then I can search for the username, and if I select it, then it will add the user mention. If we switch to source edit, you will see that it's only the user link. And if I would save, then this user will get notified that he was mentioned on the page. Then we have the DateTimeTools.
Even if you yourself edited the page?
Sorry, can you repeat?
get a notification if you edit yourself?
Then probably not, if I remember correctly. So if you mention yourself on the page, you will not get notified. So then we have the DateTimeTools. I used the sequence with the space followed by 2 slashes. And then you have the date picker, and you can select that and insert that. So, and then to the checklist element, you have here now this entry checklist in the list tools. And if you click on that, you will get the checkbox already and create a task. We have here the demo task, and so that's only a plain checklist element. And you see the wiki text is now the square brackets and the description. If I insert here a little X and switch back, so we marked it as done, it will get checked automatically and set as done as well. We have here also list behavior because it's a checklist. If I want to add a new element, I can only click enter and will automatically add a new element. So like the list, you know, from the other lists as well. So unordered or ordered will automatically add a new element as well. So let's get then to the combination of those three elements. We have now, I will use the shortcut now, so I am adding the square brackets and the space, and it will also add a new checklist element. And then we have the, let me think about, demo task list. And then I have to add the user mention, so I can here now use the space and the add, to add the user and the optional due date. I missed the insert. So, yeah. And I can also add in a row a second task. I'll add that. So if we are now going back to the source edit, you will see that a task is the combination of those three elements. So we don't have something new. It's necessary that in one line. So if you're using if you're adding the user mention in a different line, then it's not attached to the task. So this has to be in one line. Let's save that. So if you're now going to the properties, you will see also the user mentions. And here we have the object of the task with the description, the due date, and the user mention. Yes.
So where's the status?
Yes, that's missing currently. So I noticed that as well, but I didn't manage to get it fixed, so we will have to add the state, of course.
I mean, this is pretty great because maybe you could also, unless you were not finished, of course, with your talk, sorry that I'm interrupting you, but
Okay.
In some use cases it's great if you store the status of a checklist in a user cookie. So it's only a checklist that they can work on, and that's not, the status is not stored universally for everybody.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So what I want to demonstrate now was the task report, which comes also with the checklists, with the SimpleTasks extension. Let's add it that way. And then you will get an inspector as well, and you can now search for a dedicated user. So we could search here for this user, and then add some namespace if you only want to have the tasks in a namespace for a team, for example, and also search for due dates or the state. So we could set here we only want to have the open ones. And if we're saving that, you will get this grid, which also has then the description of the task, the assigned user, on which page the task is created, and for the state. And if I check that now, I will make a new revision of the page. So this will also be set to the version history that the checklist was marked as done, or that the state was updated. And then we won't have any task for this user currently open. I missed a point now. No. Okay, so that's everything about the demo. I will go back to my presentation. Okay, doesn't appear. So, the challenge we had with checklists, I already showed you. We have the list behavior in the HTML in the visual edit mode, and we have the plain text in the wiki text. And our goal was that we want to have a very easy handling of checklist elements for the user. So in the visual edit mode, there is we found a basic implementation or example implementation in the extension visual editor. which also already have the data model and the content editable for a checklist. But the problem was there that if you save the page, you will lose the info about the checklist element. So it also adds the checkbox, and you can click on that. But if you save the page or switch to the wiki text, it will only be a plain list, and no information will be stored that it's a checklist. So we thought the data model is very interesting, and that's how a user would probably like to use the checklist, with this adding more elements in one row. But we cannot differentiate then between a checklist or differentiate between a normal list and the checklist in the wiki text. So we have to find something different. And therefore we tried some different approaches. And the first try was to have the tag implementation, but as you all know, a tag implementation in wiki text is not easy handling. It's not a plain text. It will not describe the checklist element. So we gave up on this real quick, but we managed to get the data model running. So we thought, okay, we have to try to get this data model running in Visual Editor, but also have an easier wiki text. The second try was then we wrap a checklist element in a span tag to store that it's a checklist element, also keep track of the status of a checklist. But yeah, users who have to write, or you have to write HTML in wiki text will probably forget that they have to close the span tag, and then they mess up the DOM, so that's not a good solution. So we thought, okay, we have to find something different. And the only thing left was then to get an access point into the parsing process to somehow modify the output. So that we want that we can change the output from wiki text to HTML, that we have the paragraph with the square brackets and the description, and then to modify the HTML output that it matches our data model in Visual Editor with the list. And then we would have to modify it back to get the clean wiki text. And then we did some research and found the parser interface extension module. And this interface allows you to register extension tag handlers, like you know from the pre-tag or the code tag. It allows to register content model handlers and DOM processes. And the DOM processes was exactly what we were looking for, because you have two methods. You have the WT post process, which will give you a DOM object after wiki text is passed to HTML. So you will get a HTML which can you then modify before it's set to the HTML output. And the other way around would be to have the HTML pre-process. So this is the HTML before it's parsed to wiki text again. And then we thought, okay, we have exactly here our access point to change our HTML. So in the post process, WT post process, you will have this output. That's the paragraph with the checklist element, and then the inline user mention and the due date. And then we said, okay, let's check for every paragraph in the DOM object and look for our identifier with the square brackets. And if we have the square brackets at the beginning of a line, then we would recognize this as a checklist element. So a checklist element can only be set at the beginning of a new line and not inside the content, because there you could also have square brackets without any use of a checklist element. So that was our plan to identify then checklist elements. We would have to divide the paragraph on each line break to have the existing, or to have multiple checklist elements. So this one is divided with a line break and will be the second checklist element in this list. So then, when we are getting all the information and checking for the square brackets, we would then create a complete new list, and each checklist element will be wrapped inside a li tag with the classed checklist list element, so that we could match this our visual editor data model. The other way around would then be, we will search for the UL tags with the class checklist. This is more easier because it's identified, and then create from the list a new paragraph and changing each list element again to a text node, which will be then added to a new paragraph, and then replace the list with paragraph again. So, in general, you can say that it's possible to extend Parsoid in an extension by registering such a module and uses the data processor. I guess it's not used that often, so we didn't find any real implementation for that. But I guess it has some real potential to use that. And with that, you can modify the DOM object and change the HTML so that you have an easier wiki text, which is for the user easier to add, and also have the visual editor support with the data model so that it's also there, easier handling. Yes. So somehow maybe you could say that this is extending the wiki text markup a little bit, because the list also works the same. So you have in wiki text the little star, and it will also get transverted to the list element in the HTML in the visual edit mode. So I'm happy to hear your opinions about that, and I'm open for discussions now. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this is great because of several reasons. First reason is, I don't know how many of you are users of Confluence. I am a user of Confluence, and this functionality is exactly copied from there, which is great. But not only that, it is copied in a way that we all can use it. It's also, I like it a lot. So thank you very much for this. This is great news. And I just wonder if we could use the same technical possibility that you found. We should be able to actually enhance the visual editor so that you can use semantic properties, right?
Probably, yes.
So this could be very interesting, because when Parsoid comes, we might lose our double colon possibility, which is not so important because it only works in the source editor anyway. But what would be great, when you select a user and you get a list of users, you just select a property and you get a list of properties that is available, and then you add the annotation for that. So I think basically you already solved the problem. We just have to make a different extension that does exactly that.
So you have
should be easy, I think.
Yeah, you need one clear identifier, but then if that's set, I guess this should be possible, yes.
So what we have been worrying about already for let's say 3-4 years, that's now solved.
Miriam has solved it for us.
Yeah, and Victor, I think your question was still. Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. You mean the question I had in the beginning, or?
No, the one about the.
I was just thinking out
inline comments. So is the inline? Do the inline comments also use this for?
I don't know,
in the
to be
parsed.
honest.
Does ArcGXL want to comment?
No, the inline comments. No, your inline. Yeah, inline.
No integration with Parsoid yet.
So for presentation, because you don't want to change the content, of course, but for the parsed HTML, the same mechanism could be used, perhaps, but you don't do it now.
So thank you for your presentation. I'm really keen on trying this setup. Because for my personal notes, I have to admit I use Obsidian and taking tasks extensively. So, but what I also do is I break down my task into subtasks, and this is visualized by indentation.
Yeah, that's.
And now you mentioned
the
the brackets have to stand. Will there be will you work on that so that you can nest them? Please, please.
Think of that, yes. But
You mean when?
Yes, when? Yes. Sorry.
But yes, I guess this would be something what you could do. I'm not sure if that's possible in Wikitext to have this subtask.
Oh, but now we can.
Your boss is beginning to sweat.
Well, it can probably be done. It's not on the roadmap. So we have not planned for that.
Okay. More questions?
There's one question.
Joris. You never let me down, Joris.
I always have too many questions. I was trying to hold back, but I was wondering if the way you annotate in Wikitext a to-do item, is that on purpose, almost like it's done in Markdown with the square brackets?
Yes.
And why is it just a little bit different without a list item at the start? Sorry, to compare it in Markdown, you'd make a checkbox item by starting it with a list item like a star, and then the square brackets with a star in it if it's checked or not. So
That depends on the flavor of Markdown.
you might be right, yeah.
Our Markdown flavors will have exactly that syntax.
Okay, yeah, then I've had the wrong examples.
But I'll give you the opportunity to try again with a better question.
No, I was thinking about this because that would make it semantically. I can't program it, so that's easy to say. But semantically, it would be easier to make indentations in nested checklists. But yeah.
Okay, that's a good.
And I could copy my Obsidian notes directly into Wiki because Obsidian just uses that as star and then the square brackets.
Yeah, and I will use logseek, and that doesn't work with it, so it's never a perfect solution, as you said.
Thanks, Miriam. Well, we like it very much. We are a bit early, or we are not early, but in the planning, Erwin is scheduled for Q2, I think.
That's an online question.
There's an online
There's an
question,
online?
sorry. What is
Or a
it?
comment? Comment and question? Yeah. So Yaron writes, Miriam, amazing. My only comment is that it seems strange to split up this functionality among 4 extensions. Does it really make sense to use any of these extensions by itself?
Of course it does. Yes.
Yeah, you can have. So the checklist is not a task by itself. It's only a checklist element, and we would want to separate those things because if you only want to use the user mention functionality, then you would need the complete SimpleTask extension with everything else. So I guess it's a little bit more clarified where each part is coming from and to integrate into each other.
I actually like the modularity and not having everything into one big extension which grows and grows potentially.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Okay, thank you.
yeah. Thank you very much.